Okay, when the actual report gets published, let me know if we have like... Oh, wait, is this a report? Oh, okay. All right, let's fucking read it. As a supplement to the notification provided on Friday, March 22nd, 2019, I'm ready to advise you of the principal conclusions reached by Special Counsel Robert S. Mueller III to inform you about the status of my initial review of the report he has prepared. So this is being written by the Attorney General, who has read the special report from Robert Mueller, which I believe concludes the Mueller investigation. On Friday, the special counsel submitted to me a confidential report explaining the prosecution or declination decisions he has reached as described by blah, blah, blah. This report is entitled Report on the Investigation into Russian Interference in the 2016 Presidential Election. Although my review is ongoing, I believe that it is in the public interest to describe the report and to summarize the principal conclusions reached by the special counsel and the result of his investigation. The report explains that the special counsel and his staff thoroughly investigated allegations that members of the presidential campaign of Donald J. Trump and other associates with it conspired. So his staff investigated allegations that Donald J. Trump and others associated with it conspired with the Russian government in its efforts to interfere in the 2016 U.S. presidential election or sought to obstruct the related federal investigations. In the report, the special counsel noted that in completing his investigations, he employed 19 lawyers who were assisted by a team of approximately... sorry, I just got it dumb. He employed 19 lawyers who were assisted by a team of approximately 40 FBI agents, intelligence analysts, forensic accountants, and other professional staff. The special counsel issued more than 2,800 subpoenas, executed nearly 500 search warrants, obtained more than 230 orders for communication records, issued almost 50 orders authorizing the use of pen registers, made 13 requests to foreign governments for evidence, and interviewed approximately 500 witnesses. The special counsel obtained a number of indictments and convictions of individuals and entities in connection with this investigation, all of which have been publicly disclosed. During the course of his investigation, the special counsel also referred several matters to other offices for further action. The report does not recommend any further indictments, nor did the special counsel obtain any sealed indictments that have yet to be made public. Below, I summarize the principal conclusions set out in the special counsel's report. Russian interference in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. The special counsel's report is divided into two parts. The first describes the result of the special counsel's investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. The report outlines the Russian effort to influence the election and documents crimes committed by persons associated with the Russian government in connection with those efforts. So this is referring to the other indictments that have been laid forth for like the Internet Research Agency was one. And then I think the Guccifer hackings of the DNC campaign as well. The report further explains that a primary consideration for the special counsel's investigation was whether any Americans, including individuals associated with the Trump campaign, joined the Russian conspiracies to influence the election, which would be a federal crime. The special counsel's investigations did not find that the Trump campaign or anyone associated with it conspired or coordinated with Russia in its efforts to influence the 2016 U.S. presidential election. As the report states, the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. The special counsel's investigation determined that there were two main Russian efforts to influence the 2016 election. The first involves attempts by a Russian organization, okay, so that's what we're talking about, the Internet Research Agency, to conduct disinformation and social media operations in the United States designed to sow social discord, eventually with the aim of interfering with the election. As noted above, the special counsel did not find any U.S. person or Trump campaign official or associate conspired or knowingly coordinated with the IRA in its efforts, although the special counsel brought criminal charges against a number of Russian nationals and entities in connection with these activities. The second element involved the Russian government's efforts to conduct computer hacking operations designed to gather and disseminate information to influence the election. The special counsel found that Russian government actors successfully hacked into computers, and this is the Guccifer stuff, hacked into computers and obtained emails from persons affiliated with the Clinton campaign and Democratic Party organizations and publicly disseminated those materials through various intermediaries, including WikiLeaks. Based on these activities, the special counsel brought criminal charges against a number of Russian military officers for conspiring to hack into computers in the U.S. for proposing to influence the election, or for purposes for influencing the election. I'm pretty sure that this is for, I don't know if these are like foreign people, right? These are foreign agents in Russia. These are never going to be like extradited to us or anything. But as noted above, the special counsel did not find that the Trump campaign or anyone associated with it conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in these efforts, despite multiple offers from Russian-affiliated individuals to assist the Trump campaign. Okay, but as noted above, the special counsel did not find that the Trump campaign or anyone associated with it conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in these efforts, despite multiple offers from Russian-affiliated individuals to assist the Trump campaign. So this shows that Russian people did reach out to the Trump campaign to try to conspire, but that the people either didn't respond or intentionally didn't respond to these offers, which is probably good. Obstruction of justice. The report's second part addresses a number of actions by the president, most of which have been the subject of public reporting. that the special counsel investigated as potentially raising obstruction of justice concerns. After making a thorough factual investigation into these matters, the special counsel considered whether to evaluate the conduct under department standards governing prosecution and declination decisions, but ultimately determined not to make a traditional prosecutorial judgment. The special counsel therefore did not draw a conclusion one way or another as to whether the examined conduct constituted obstruction. Instead, for each of the relevant actions investigated, the report sets out evidence on both sides of the question and leaves unresolved what the special counsel views as the difficult issues of law and fact concerning whether the president's actions and intent could be viewed as obstruction. The special counsel states that while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him. That's going to be an omega yikes for me, fam. The special counsel's decision to describe the facts of obstruction investigation without reaching any legal conclusion leaves it to the attorney general to determine whether the conduct described in the report constitutes a crime. Over the course of the investigation, the special counsel's office engaged in discussions with certain department officials regarding many of the legal and factual matters at issue in the special counsel's obstruction investigations. After reviewing the special counsel's final report on these issues, consulting with department officials, including the Office of Legal Counsel, and applying the principles of federal prosecution that guide overcharging decisions, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein have concluded that the evidence developed during the special counsel investigation is not sufficient to establish that the president committed an obstruction of justice offense. People are going to fight about this. Assuming the whole report is made public, which I imagine after some redactions it will be, this is probably going to be what people will fight over next. Our determination was made without regard to and is not based on the constitutional considerations that surround the indictment and criminal prosecutions of a sitting president. In making this determination, we noted that the special counsel recognized that the evidence does not establish that the president was involved in an underlying crime related to Russian election interference, and that, while not determinative, the absence of such evidence bears upon the president's intent with respect to obstruction. Generally speaking, to obtain and sustain an obstruction conviction, the government would need to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that a person acting with corrupt intent engaged in obstructive conduct with a sufficient nexus to a pending or contemplated proceeding. I feel like that's not correct, but I could be wrong. I feel like I read like a big prosecutor's write-up on this. That like, let's say somebody comes to my house and let's say this, like, we know you have child porn, we're gonna fuck your shit up. And let's say I like, oh no, fuck it, and I like break all my computers and blow my shit up. Even if I didn't have anything, I think you could still view that as obstruction, couldn't you? Even if you're not guilty of the crime or whatever, doesn't that still count as obstruction of justice? I thought it did. I could be wrong though. In cataloging the president's actions, many of which took place in public view, the report identifies no actions that in our judgment constitute obstructive conduct, had a nexus to a pending or contemplated proceeding, and were done with corrupt intent, each of which, under the department's principles of federal prosecution guiding charging decisions, would need to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt to establish an obstruction of justice offense. The current Attorney General Barr literally uses the narrowest possible, and that's why a lot of people were against him. Oh, I don't know anything about Barr, so... State of the Department's reviews. The relevant regulations contemplate that the special counsel's report will be a confidential report to the Attorney General. See, Office Special Counsel, blah, blah, blah. As I previously stated, however, I am mindful of the public interest in this matter. For that reason, my goal and intent is to release as much of the special counsel's report as I can, consistent with applicable law, regulations, and department policies. Based on my discussions with the special counsel and my initial review, it is apparent that the report contains material that is or could be subject to federal rule of criminal procedure, which imposes restrictions on the use and disclosure of information relating to matters occurring before a grand jury. Limits disclosure of certain grand jury information in a criminal investigation or prosecution, disclosure of material, blah, blah, blah. This restriction protects the integrity of grand jury proceedings and ensures that given restrictions, the schedule for processing the report depends in part on how quickly the department can identify the material that by law cannot be made public. I've requested the assistance of the special counsel in identifying all information contained in the report as quickly as possible. Separately, I also must identify any information that could impact other ongoing matters, including those special counsels referred to other offices. So there are a lot of other charges that have been referred to other offices related to people getting charged with stuff. Although that shouldn't have anything to do with Russian-related stuff. That might have to do with like local financial crimes and whatnot. Given these restrictions, the schedule for... okay, we already read this. Separately, I must also identify any information that could impact other... As soon as I will be in a position to move forward expeditiously in determining which can be released in light of applicable law, regulations, and departmental policies. As I have observed, my initial notifications, the special counsel regulations provide that the Attorney General may determine that public release of notifications to your blah, blah, blah would be a public interest. I have so determined, and I will disclose this letter to the public after delivering it to you. So by virtue of the special investigation, everything related to basically, so there are two main questions here. One is related to the whether or not Trump or Trump's campaign committed a conspiracy against the United States, which, assuming you believe the report of of Robert Mueller, which you probably should, it seems to be a very clear no, that not only Trump, but the people around Trump did not engage in any sort of behavior. And then the second question, and this is probably going to become the new battleground for the next year or two, is going to be related to the obstruction of justice. And then that's probably going to start, that fight will start as soon as the actual report is released. But we can't really speak to that until we see the evidence on both sides. Why do they lie about meeting the Russians so much? I have no idea. Like I said, I mean, like, it's always been possible that, like, nothing ends up happening, but holy fuck, they never did themselves any favors. I don't know why. But, yeah, I mean, Trump is, I mean, we already know that Trump is, like, both politically and unpolitically, like, pretty fucking stupid. So it's possible, again, that he's just really dumb. How much of a boost in the polls do you think this will give him? I don't know if it will help Trump much at all. I think that, like, I think that for Republicans, I say for Republicans, probably true for everybody, but, like, when you attack somebody, sometimes that actually, like, strengthens your base. So, like, for instance, the mod Exkillsmeh, your thought process for this Exkillsmeh was still really fucking cancerous. Like, the whole Bayesian shit was a really fucking stupid way to approach this. What question was I asking? Or wait, what was I answering? Fuck. Oh, how much of a boost in the polls? So, like, for instance, for Kavanaugh, I'm pretty sure he got more popular as he got attacked with the rape allegations. I'm pretty sure that's what the polling data showed. So it's possible that, like, the popularity of Trump being attacked has already been factored in, because people already had, like, the idea that like that everybody's just bullying Trump or whatever. Ah, fuck. Exkillsmeh. I hope I know you're smarter than this. I know that you're riding high or whatever. I know because you're, like, a big Trump or whatever. But, like, you predicted a 40% probability that Trump campaign colluded based on no evidence. Don't tell me my reasoning was off, man. Right? You understand that, like, you can't really talk about probabilities, like, post-fact, right? You have to know that. I know that you know this, right? You sound like every poker player who's like, I had aces pre-flop and he had Jack 10. I can't believe he called my all-in and he beat me. Like, there should be no chance of that happening. It's like, okay, well, I mean, like, right, like, I could technically still be correct about the 40% and it didn't go through, right? Or Trump had, like, a 30% chance to win the election. I mean, like, that's not how that works, right? Okay, wait, where are we? You absolutely can and should revisit your past takes and reconsider why you were so wrong. But never mind. I don't think you're going to argue with me on good faith on this. I mean, I've said, like, multiple times, and I know you're not going to believe me. I've said multiple times that I'm not really comfortable giving a percentage. I didn't realize that the reason why you were, like, hardcore pressing me for a percentage was so that you could, like, try to, like, bad faith, like, nail me to the wall on it. Like, I was never married to 40%. And I'd said multiple, like, you can probably count over, like, 50 times on stream where I've literally said, like, we should probably wait for the report to come out before we really know. Like, everyone in this chat has heard me say that a million times. Like, could it? Like, I could see it going either way. I don't really know. Like, I've said that. I could see it going either way. And we should probably wait for the special counsel to finish our investigation. I've said this multiple times, like 50 plus times on stream I've said it. Like, I know that you're, like, crazy. Like, you were, like, insanely pushing me for, like, what is the percentage? Like, I don't know. Like, yeah. Destiny, how you know it wasn't 40%? You could have said 99% of the results would not have made you wrong. Yeah, that's why I'm really weird that Exkillsmeh. I'm pretty sure that Exkillsmeh is just, like, really happy that the report kind of, like, vindicated his point of view. But I don't know why that would make him put, like, really. Yeah, like, technically there could have been a 99% chance that Trump was guilty, and this report still doesn't prove that percentage wrong. That's not how that works, right? Like, it doesn't work that way. You're 100% wrong, man. No, you're engaging in bad stats right now. But let me be clear before we find out what's in the Mueller report. My contention has been that the collusion was after the election. I've said countless times that I don't care about tweets sent during the election. I hope Mueller investigated connections to Russia before and after the election. I would be incredibly fucking shocked if, through the scope of this investigation, Mueller didn't investigate stuff after the election. This is a really fucking stupid tweet. I don't know why he would tweet this. At this point, unless the Attorney General is literally lying, I would drop everything related to conspiracy against the United States. Like, I mean, we should feel pretty good about, I mean, Mueller did his investigation. They have a lot of charges that they recommended, a lot of charges that went through. I'm pretty sure you dropped this at this point. Destiny, 2 days ago? Even 2 days ago. This is a really stupid tweet to make. You don't want to like leave yourself open to like, the thing that you don't want to do is like, once you've found like evidence, once you've gotten like a conclusion for something, you don't want to keep leaving it open so that you can constantly hang on it like for days and years after, because then it's going to be like, well, my contention was that collusion happened afterwards. Well, my contention is that collusion happened with people that weren't necessarily Trump. Well, my contention is that collusion, right? You don't, because then you can like infinitely play the game forever. It's really dumb. Doesn't Barr's thing basically say the Department of Justice won't indict? Doesn't that mean it wasn't passed off to, I don't know what SDNY means. The Barr statement says that Mueller's investigation finished and there was no examples of, there's no evidence that Trump or anybody in Trump's campaign responded to any request from Russian people to influence the election. That was assuming Barr's not lying, which I don't think the DOJ would fucking lie about that. Oh, Southern District of New York. Oh, so Mueller's investigations could have, Mueller's investigation has recommended things to other districts, but that investigation itself has no more indictments, sealed or otherwise, that are waiting to come out. He said they weren't part of the hacking of emails or troll farms. The Mueller report doesn't look at money laundering from the past 20 years. Sure, but that's not really what this issue was about, right? We weren't curious if Trump was laundering money 20 years ago. And even if he was, I don't know if we care about that right now as for a president, but... What exactly they're referring to for the obstruction of justice in that document when they say it doesn't exonerate Trump? Probably stuff related to Comey and probably stuff related to, who was the attorney general before? Was it the woman attorney general? I don't remember what the questions were about. I would have to go back, but why wouldn't we care that he laundered money from Russia for the past 20 years? Because it's not relevant to the conspiracy against the United States thing right now. That's not what we're relevantly looking at. How shocking that some cracker who lied about WMDs for Bush and who terrorized Muslim communities ended up being a wet fart. If you're going to go against what, so I'll tell you this right now, and you can conduct yourselves as you want. I would hope that my community would rise above this. This is my hope, but I would trust the outcomes of the Mueller investigation. Like that investigation's tendrils spawned very fucking far. If you read the indictments related to the DNC hacking, they had a lot of information based on how Russia conducted itself, not to mention all of the indictments that went out for everybody else. I would trust the results of this investigation. If you start screeching against it, then it looks really bad.
Stop saying they didn't respond. Trump Jr. I love it. And Stone talking to Assange. They responded. They might not have explicitly colluded, but they responded a lot.
They didn't respond with, first of all, I don't know if that Trump Jr., I love it as proof of them, like, coordinating with people to conspire against the United States, but...
Wowie.
Do you think no Trump will be more relaxed and not have outbursts on Twitter? No, he'll still have outbursts about every little thing. I don't know why... Assuming the entire campaign like ran itself fairly clean, I don't know why Trump made himself look so fucking bad over all of this. How were people indicted for shit if the report says no one responded or was involved? Were they just talking about the people other than those indicted? Well, for instance, like Manafort was indicted for past financial crimes. Cohen was indicted for elections fraud or FEC violations, Federal Election Commission violations, not for like stuff related to Russian collusion.
To ask a quick couple questions? Is it possible to call in?
If you're a sub and you're in the sub channel, I'll drag you in soon. But not stuff related to like conspiracy against the United States, which was what the investigation was looking for, right? How can this be reconciled with the fact that almost every single person around him was guilty of federal crimes? Well, they were guilty of federal crimes, but they weren't guilty of crimes related to conspiracy against the United States, right? That's what the Mueller investigation was looking for, was whether or not the president or his campaign engaged in conspiracy against the United States. Did they coordinate with foreign agents to undermine the electoral process, right? Something like that. This is what the central question was about. Whether or not they were guilty of other federal crimes that were uncovered under the purview of the investigation is not what was like necessarily done, right? Destiny, when are you going to do the stream where you check out the presidential candidate? Sometime soon. It was probably not clean. Oh my God, Exkillsmeh, stop. Exkillsmeh, you're on a redemption arc. Please stop saying dumb shit. I don't think I was right. I objectively was right. So whether or not, I don't know why I'm explaining this to you, because I know you know this, right? You can't determine whether or not a percentage was accurate based on a single outcome. You can never do that. So for instance, I could say I have a 99% chance to do something and then fail to do it. That doesn't mean that I was wrong. I could have been incredibly unlucky, right? Much the same, like this is pretty basic stats. Destiny was saying there was a 50% chance of collusion conspiracy being true fairly recently. To give you a perspective, a 50% threshold constitutes enough evidence to win in court. Wait, what? This is not at all like what the conversation was about. If I think that there's like a 50% chance that some guy murdered some other dude, that doesn't mean I have enough evidence to take him to court and win. Wait, what are you talking about? This is so stupid. Yes, that's not what the conversation is about. In civil court, first of all, okay. That's not, when you ask somebody like, what do you think are the chances? So like, let's say for instance, somebody, let's say that you know, like, oh, there's some guy that's a huge asshole of a landlord and he scammed like tenants in the past. And then some friend is like, fuck, I think my landlord scammed me. And the guy's like, well, what do you think are the chances of it? And then the friend who knows the guy that's living there is like, oh, well, he scammed people in the past. It's probably like a 50% chance he did it. That doesn't mean that you all of a sudden are saying like, oh, well, I have enough evidence to take him to court right now and like win in civil court where I just need a preponderance of evidence. Like, no, that's not how anybody uses those words. That's like such a dumb take. This is literally what courts do, but it's not when you ask like a casual person, what are the chances of something happening? They're not saying like, oh, like the chances of this having happened are, I have enough evidence to take him to court right now and win. Like that's not how that works at all. Why don't you call Oliver out on his bullshit? When did Oliver engage in bullshit? The campaign was probably not clean. When we see the underlying shit, the evidence will appear less conclusive to a layperson than the overall conclusion suggests he's still probably innocent. Yeah, but like the problem is like typically you want to go by. So when Mueller releases his report, almost positively there is going to be stuff in there that looks like collusion or that looks like conspiracy to commit fraud against the United States. Almost for sure. I would bet money on it. However, you should probably rely on the overlying opinion of the investigator. You should rely on their overall conclusion rather than trying to dig out or mine like specific pieces of evidence, because the overall conclusion of somebody that's well-versed in all the materials is going to be better than trying to pick out like one or two little facts. Like, oh, that's definitely something that happened, right? This is for instance how the Iraq War happened, right? In the Iraq War, our intelligence agencies believed that there probably weren't weapons of mass destruction. That was the overwhelming opinion, but it was the Office of Special Plans that gave us small tidbits of unvetted intelligence that passed it directly to the White House, and that's where they made the decision to go in and look for shit. So, yeah. I was just saying that because people will think the campaign was clean due to the Mueller disclosure. Well, no one's saying the campaign is clean, just that there's probably no anything related to Russia collusion. The huge caveat to the summary. I don't think that's a huge caveat. Okay, guys, we have to be the ones. Listen, how many people do I have here? 6,000 people? Okay. Please, 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 please don't do this. Please don't fucking do this, okay? If the Mueller Council is saying that there was no conspiracy to commit fraud against the United States, then there's not. Drop it and move on. It's over, okay? That's done. Don't hold on to this and try to drag it out. Like, well, I'm sure there's going to be something bad in the report. And when we read the report, I'm sure there's going to be something that, like, it's done. The report is over. The report is filed. Like, it's done. Move on to the next thing. Focus on the 2020 elections. Focus on the candidates you like. Like, move on. Don't do this shit. It's going to look real fucking bad 1 or 2 years from now. Don't fucking do this, okay? This is going to look real fucking bad. I will hope that everyone will have access to the full report. Maybe, yeah. Actually, but I don't even know how I feel about the full report being released now. I'm not sure. Oh, fuck. Exkillsmeh. I love you so much. You're one of my only right-leaning people in chat that I can like, that is like reasonably intelligent, but you operate in such bad faith sometimes. It like really makes me wonder. Graphene, he has no self-reflection. Destiny had a chance to prove to everyone that he's above partisan takes. He could have taken a hot take and said, I think it's unlikely until I see evidence, and today he would have had so much credibility. Instead, he defended a conspiracy theory, and even now he refuses to revisit his prior beliefs that led him astray. If anybody watched my stream for any measure of time, I said multiple times on this stream that I could see it going either way and that we should wait until the report comes out from Robert Mueller. I've said that a million fucking times. I've also said a million fucking times that, hey, you know, it's possible the Trump campaign is just real fucking stupid. I've explicitly said that on stream multiple times. I've said it over and over and over again. The only time in my entire life when I gave like, oh, maybe there's a 40% chance that Trump did it, was when you pushed me in a conversation over the course of like 5 minutes to give me a percent. You're like, what's the percent? What's the percent? Which I was incredibly uncomfortable doing because I don't fucking know. I don't know any. I have no idea how I'm going to give it. And I was like, I don't know, maybe 4. And the only reason I said 40%, like, I don't know, less than half, I guess. So 40%. Like, that's the only time I've ever uttered that number. It only came when you pushed me hard. And then you use that number. To like fucking like crucify me over the next like year or two. Like Destiny said 40%. Like, I don't fucking know if it's fucking 40%. Like, I have no idea. Like, I don't know. But I mean, like, it's definitely likely. I mean, I think that Trump is the kind of person that would do it if he was given the opportunity to. And I know that a lot of people around him are dirty as fuck, especially with his connections to Manafort. But I constantly and consistently said, we should wait until the report comes out from Mueller before we like jump off the bridge and do any crazy conclusions. Like, I've said that a million times. There is not a single person in my stream that like literally thinks like, oh, Destiny knows for sure that Trump did collusion. We're just waiting for it. In fact, I've cautioned people away from that. Where it's like, it's totally possible that nothing comes from this. Like, that's totally possible. Actually, and that was my take 2 days ago when I said that Mueller was filing the report that was done. My take 2 days ago, and actually, so I'm gonna go back on stream and hunt for the clips, as I said that, oh yeah, it's probably not collusion then. If the investigation is already over after 2 years, it's probably not collusion, unless they're incredibly fucking stupid. Like, I've said this explicitly like a million times on my stream, you know? But okay. I can't square that with you taking such a strong stance against my take that it was highly unlikely. Why would you have been so opinionated against my take unless you actually did put significant stock in the theory? Because your approach to it was very stupid.
Trump,
that was my problem.
The entire left.
My problem was that like your line of inquiry. Well, has any president colluded in the past? No. So it's highly improbable that Trump did. That line of inquiry is a stupid way to approach that problem. That's why I was so against your thing, right? If somebody else, because have I argued like people thought it was unlikely? If somebody would have told me like, I think it's very unlikely that Trump colluded, yeah, probably, sure. Destiny, my line of inquiry is 100%. What are my prior beliefs and what is the evidence that happened? But your prior beliefs being the idea that like no president has like committed conspiracy against the United States in the past, I don't think is a valid way of approaching this problem. But we can agree or disagree. Like, well, no, I totally disagree with your take on like how your line of inquiry went. Like, that wasn't my prior. That was absolutely part of your prior. Or would it be your post because you use it to modify your whatever? Do you want to talk on voice? No, not really, but we're never going to agree on this. I mean, if you want to, I drag you in, but there's like, we're never agreeing on this. But yeah, if you want to, go for it. I'm in general lobby. You should be able to see my, yeah. All right, what's up, buddy? What's up?
Well.
Yeah? Is that what we're...
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, so I guess, so now I just wanted to say, so you now, what's your take now? It's unlikely, right? Didn't happen.
Well, now my take would approach 0% because I have very high faith in the special counsel. Yeah.
Cool, yeah.
Without you need a very grand conspiracy, sure.
Right. So now all I'm saying is that now that like it's happened, it's good practice on both sides to kind of like go back and be like, okay, why did I think what I did at the time? And that's because all priors are wrong, right? All priors are wrong, but some are useful. That's the thing.
Okay.
And so you accuse like my prior of being some like really flimsy idea of like, oh, Trump has never colluded with Russia before. No, my prior was guided by probably two things. One is just the complexity of the hypothesis. Anytime you have like a small set of data points, it's very easy to fit like a super complex hypothesis to those data points. Your bias should be towards simpler explanations. And all of the evidence had much simpler explanations at the time. There wasn't actually even any real evidence.
I really think that you have a horrible head for like post hoc rationalization. So I'm trying my best for this conversation. But like the fact that Manafort himself like had already engaged in like embezzlement crimes and everything like prior to this related to foreign agents, I feel like makes like a simple explanation involving him like pretty probable.
But you haven't even established that they're actually. I'm talking simple explanation, like why would why would Russia even need that sort of incentive to actually engage in these activities? Trump
What do you mean need the incentive?
Trump was such an unlikely candidate to win. The idea that like the seeds for this would be placed so far back.
I never thought. I never made the claim. Oh, hold on. Firstly, I'm sorry. If I said this, then you can go ahead and shit all over me. I'm not one of the people that said that like Trump has been like a plant from like 2013 or some shit. That was crazy conspiracy.
Right. That was a dossier, right?
Did the dossier specific? Well,
yes,
so like,
well,
hold on. Wasn't the dossier more along the ideas that like there were that there might have been like what is it called, compromat or whatever Russians call it, that they might have gathered something that could compromise Trump a long time ago, and that maybe they would just use it now?
No, yes, but also the dossier did take the stance or did make the case that this was like a long conspiracy theory, that it was one of those things. So it's interesting you said that.
No. I have never. Okay. Other people might have, but like the idea that like Trump is like or sorry, go ahead.
For anybody who used the dossier to justify their conspiracy theory, basically, can we shit on them because they were peddling that nonsense?
I don't know. A lot of the stuff from the dossier like ended up panning out to be like.
That's not true at all. No non-publicly information ended up being panned out.
What, didn't you have the issues with like for instance, I want to say, wasn't it Cohen originally that was like one of the first people vindicated that he was never in some state, but then it turned out that he had a second passport and that it was likely, or at least probable, that he had gone to some place.
It's interesting you say that, because this is why I care about this issue so much, because I'm like pretty genuinely disgusted. I know that doesn't mean anything to anybody else, but like by the way that people have been, what I see as manipulated by the media. Because what you said is false. No, Cohen was never in Prague. That was like one of the most central claims of the dossier. And in fact, it was probably the single most important one, because it was the one claim that actually had like a specific accusation.
Yeah, that had a specific time, a specific thing. Yeah, I don't think that the passport was ever 100% concluded. I think that the reporting on it was that it would have been possible for him to travel to it. I don't think the media ever specifically said he was in Prague. I think it was more that like a second passport revealed that he was in an area where he could have taken a train to Prague, that theoretically, but that was never actually like panned out or proven or whatever. Nobody approved that.
It was never proven, and actually, in fact, the media did, Lawfare blog specifically did actually say that they had evidence from a quote unquote secret source that Cohen was in Prague.
Who reported that?
Benjamin Witt's Lawfare blog. That was a pretty big deal. It was picked up. It wasn't validated by anybody else.
No. I feel like I remember that coming out, but nobody else reported on it. So I don't think there have been like 2 or 3 different like bombshell claims. I wish I could remember the other. There was one other really big one that came out that like some random fucking blog reported on, and their source was like 2 operatives in the FBI that nobody else picked up on. And if like CNN or other people or like WAPO or whatever aren't like picking up on those things, I usually think they're probably bullshit.
Sorry, that was McClatchy. McClatchy isn't like just a random blog, and it was picked up by the media, but the media was reporting on their claims. So like CNN reported on it, but they didn't claim to like validate it. Mm-hmm. But it was still a huge bombshell even then. And
that BuzzFeed News ended up making a report, and that ended up being their sources were like 2 or 3 like undercover people, but that was never corroborated by any other major media outlet. I wish I could remember what the BuzzFeed stuff was on, but Mueller came out and like directly. I think that was when Mueller published something publicly and specifically said like BuzzFeed is incorrect in their reporting, which was really rare.
Yeah, that one was the accusation that Cohen was going to give evidence that Trump directly directed him to lie. And
yeah, something. Oh yeah. And I think BuzzFeed's source for that was like 2 or 3 like undercover or 2 or 3 like embedded agents or some shit that ended up not being corroborated by anyone. Yeah.
Yeah. So it feels like I'm going hard on the numbers, and it's not just the numbers; it's the general confidence level. But even more broadly, the reason why is because I feel like the media misled, frankly, people like you, but obviously other people even worse. Because there's such like the media dropped the ball so freaking hard on the story. With all like we could talk all day about stories the media got wrong, but going back to what I was talking about before about my general prior belief and how this being very unlikely, and how it's very easy to take a set of data points and fit a super complicated hypothesis to that. And
especially with somebody, because your point initially was that Trump is a huge. This is what part of the reasons why I don't like the idea of going back. This is why I don't like the idea of going back 20 years to financial crimes, because somebody that is as big a business person as Trump probably you could probably pin him on certain crimes related to almost every country on the planet, right? I imagine wherever there's Trump buildings or whatever. I agree. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, given that the Mueller investigation was going on for so long, I thought that that's what would have happened. Honestly, I was expecting Trump to get in trouble for this, and to be fair, they did dig up a lot of other people, Manafort and Cohen, got related the porn star payoffs and such. But I'll give you another example of why I was so confident, but also so frustrated. The Washington Post obviously very aggressively pursued the dossier allegation that Cohen was in Prague, right? And they sent fleets of reporters to Prague, and they spent, by their account, months and months trying to validate this. They said they went to every single hotel and hostel in Prague trying to track down Cohen, and it came up with absolutely nothing. Now, did they report on the fact that they tried to validate this and they didn't find anything? No, they didn't report on it. In fact, the only reason we ever learned about it was because their editor just casually mentioned it in a podcast that they tried to. So when we're talking about the public record, there are all these data points out there that quote unquote look suspicious. But the media chooses not to publish these other data points of, hey, here's the most clear accusation in the dossier. We tried to find evidence for it. We couldn't find evidence. But they don't make that a story. They just say, oh, we couldn't find evidence for that, so we won't talk about it. And that really poisons the well in terms of the public evidence you can use to even justify your
Sure, I kind of agree. I kind of agree they probably should have published it anyway, although I imagine that if they publish a story like that, almost nobody will read it anyway. It would be incredibly... Exactly. Sure.
And I think that's where I was when we started talking about it. Was I thought that it wasn't a conspiracy theory. I thought, the media, there's a capitalist game. They need clicks. They need people to watch their shows. So that's kind of why the narrative became so big. But at the same part, that's kind of why I was so frustrated.
Are you giving me the anti-capitalist take that for-profit media is probably not a healthy thing for...
Oh, it depends on the for-profit. I think there's some value in it. I think that's probably the one take I would have that other people don't have, is that how interested would people be in anything if there weren't at least some of it. So there's got to be some of it. But I think there is a case to be made that, especially in this instance, what I saw happening was I saw the media basically preying on people's biases, and they wanted it to happen. And even though there was no evidence, the media basically drummed up the expectations so much that it's actually been hilarious watching them try to say, oh, let's manage our expectations for the Mueller report because it might not be that much of a bombshell. The only reason people expected it to be such a huge bombshell is because of the way that the media hyped absolutely everything.
Sure. The media does this around literally every single event though, right? We're kind of always in the the hype zone for literally every fucking story that has ever come out. But I guess I can agree that it's probably some level of irresponsibility, but holy fuck, Trump didn't do himself any favors. He constantly fucks himself over and over and over again. You have to admit, or maybe you won't, I don't know, that the optics on almost everything Trump does always ends up looking as horrible as it fucking can be. Holy fuck.
Yeah, the optics on what he does are definitely not great.
Almost he sets out 10 paths and will pick the worst possible way forward to look as guilty as possible. He does this consistently. So I would argue that some responsibility probably falls to him as well for not doing his part in being a presentable person. I don't know.
I think he probably does bear some responsibility, but I think there was also even cases of stuff in the dossier that was just flat out wrong.
But the dossier wasn't the main. There was a month-long period where the dossier was first of all, I'm pretty sure that a lot of the claims in the dossier were validated. I have to find a list. I know that a lot of the bombshell ones weren't. We're probably never getting piss tapes or whatever, right? But But a lot of the reporting was done on other stuff related to what was the huge one that had to do with the big Trump tax shit that nobody even ended up caring about? I don't even remember. It was a huge story for all of 12 hours, and then nobody gave a fuck about it. There was a lot of stuff that was reported on the media that was accurate, but I guess maybe the overall narrative that was spun with the looming investigation, I think, was not accurate.
Carter Page traveling abroad, but that was public information by the time the media came out. So there was no real non-public information that they got right, and the dossier also got some stuff quote unquote right that wasn't really right. For example, the dossier alleged that the Kremlin offered Trump like super sweetheart real estate deals as part of like their long-term
Sure.
Manchurian
And then real quick, I have
scheme.
to be, because if you're going to be insanely anal and everything, so the dossier didn't actually allege anything. These were just reporting what third parties had stated, right? The dossier didn't necessarily make these allegations. I'm just being very clear on that, but go ahead.
Okay, sure. So yeah,
Some of the stuff reported in the dossier, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, that's fine. But so then something else comes along, like, okay, the Trump aides sent like emails to like low-level like Putin secretaries for Trump Tower. And everybody in the media cheerleads that as, oh, look, the dossier got something right. When in reality, the correct take was, well, hold on. If the dossier sources were so well placed and high level, how come the dossier didn't specifically identify this deal? Because that would have actually been an example of non-public information. That
Sure. Well, the dossier was a collection of like dozens of sources, right? Like some of it had been corroborated by multiple, some of it not at all. Some of it was like highly suspect, and some of it was pretty confident. Like the dossier was not just like a single. Well, there was one guy that worked on the majority of it, right? The Christopher Steele or whatever. I don't remember what his first name was, but like the sources for that dossier were like there were a lot of different people that like they'd collected information from.
Yeah, and that's even where it gets sketchier, because the first time we talked about it, even we didn't know at the time that the dossier was Oppo research funded by Clinton and the DNC. We didn't even know that at the time, and that was like a pretty massive revelation.
Sure.
But there were other like just flat out wrong claims in the dossier, and this one like really rubs me the wrong way. For example, the dossier alleged that Cohen's wife had some like background from some village in Russia, right? And that ended up just being like totally 100% incorrect. But BuzzFeed actually edited that out of the dossier before they published it.
I need to see proof of that. You're saying that BuzzFeed edited the dossier before they published it? I thought they published it in its whole.
No, they redacted some things. And one of the things that they redacted was like a materially false, like factually incorrect claim. So part of it, they can say, oh, well, it was obviously wrong, so we're trying to like protect them. But on the other hand, it's kind of like, well, they make it look better by editing out things that are just materially and factually incorrect, right? But I'll try to find that. I'll find that edit. Let me find that.
Clinton didn't stats the dossier. My understanding was that it was initially Republican funded, and then they dropped it once it became clear that Trump was going to be the nominee or something. And then they moved, and then eventually the Democrats picked up on it, or I think the Clinton team picked up on it. That was my understanding. I don't know how much was funded by each side, but. Destiny, or maybe they don't want to platform obviously false information. No, if they're publishing a dossier that you don't know is confirmed, you shouldn't be editorializing it. That's really, really, really irresponsible. Destiny, wrong. The Clinton campaign hired a law firm who picked it up. Well, that's the same thing. Come on, dude.
Russia, Vladimir Putin, Russia hates Russia.
Yeah, so basically, this was on Section 4 of the dossier. The dossier claimed that Cohen had a wife of Russian origin whose father was a leading Moscow property developer. And in the redacted version that BuzzFeed released on January 10th, 2017, they blocked out that statement. So, this is just an example. I can
Wait, yeah, sure. Dude. Also, you're really on this dossier thing. I haven't heard people talking about that for quite a long time, unless maybe I'm just not listening to the right news sources. But
well, the dossier basically justified the investigation. If there's no dossier, there's no investigation. And to add to that, part of my frustration,
I don't
over this
know if that's necessarily true. I'm pretty sure that, I have to go back and look at it, but I'm pretty sure what you just said is 100% false, because I think that was Nunes's claim. But when they went to the FISA courts to authorize the wiretapping and everything else they did, I don't think they could just source the dossier. I'm almost positive they had to have other information that granted them the warrants from those FISA courts.
In congressional testimony, I don't remember who said this, but the statement was they might or may not have gotten the FISA warrant without the dossier as evidence.
Sure, but like the whole Mueller investigation was not just on the dossier. Like that might have caused like 1 or 2 warrants, but all the subsequent warrants were obtained because of other information that the initial FISA warrants had revealed. They did that whole Mueller investigation was not done off the back of that dossier.
Mueller debriefed Christopher Steele. The dossier was the roadmap for the Russia collusion narrative in terms of the investigation. I mean,
sure, but the 2 year, so hold on. Specifically, what I'm saying, the 2-year investigation that Mueller did not all hinge on the dossier. Do you agree with that, or do you disagree? Do you literally think the dossier itself was what fueled all 2 years worth of FISA warrants and subpoenas and all of that? That they were.
I mean, basically, it was part of it. Like you can say, oh, if it weren't part of it, they still would have gotten the FISA warrant. But in reality, they did use it. Not only did they use
did,
it,
but like for like the initial stuff, like that's like saying that. Like, well, never mind. Sorry, go ahead.
But that not only did they use it, but they also like double dipped on it. The dossier, the FISA warrant, included a Yahoo News report written by Michael Isikoff, and in the Yahoo report, the FBI claimed that wasn't sourced by Christopher Steele, and it actually was. So they broke a cardinal rule of sourcing on top of actually using the dossier itself in a FISA court. So for me, that actually makes me angry. The idea of unverified OPA research being used in like a secret surveillance court.
But there must have been something else to it. Like you can't just like take like an unverified report and then go to like a FISA court and be like, hey, I need like a warrant. No possible way. There's no way. Getting those warrants is supposed to be like pretty tough.
Well, it's supposed to be, but in this case, it apparently wasn't. Carter Page,
how can you say that it apparently wasn't? How do you know that?
I know that because they used Clinton OPA research in their court filings, and they may not have gotten it.
Why are you saying that just because it's OPA research, that means it's bad?
Okay, so the fact that it's OPA research has implications for its credibility. Do you agree?
Yeah, but that's up to a federal judge to determine whether or not they can issue a warrant. Just because it's OPA research doesn't de facto make it bad.
So interesting. It's up to the judge. So that you realize the FBI did not disclose that it was OPA research to the judge, right?
Maybe it wasn't relevant? I'm not sure.
But you just told me it was relevant.
No, I didn't. You're the ones. I literally wait. I just said it wasn't relevant. I said the fact that something is OPPO research doesn't necessarily make it bad.
All right, let's pause.
Yeah, sure.
Let's go back. Let's clarify here. So this started because you asked me why it matters. I said it matters because it undermines its credibility. You agreed.
Hold on. Hold on. Wait. Hold on, because I don't remember all the specifics. So people are saying that what you're saying is not true. That the FBI did specifically acknowledge that it was opposition research when they filed for those FISA warrants.
Wrong. No, people in your chat are lying.
All right, hook me up with a source, boys.
And in a footnote, they claimed that it was like politically motivated, but they did not disclose that it was opposition research paid for by Clinton or the DNC. That the people in your chat are just 1,000,000% wrong in that.
Okay, well, hook me up with them sources, boys. Let's see it.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I'm right about everything.
Okay, and also people are saying that, hold on, real quick. People are saying that FISA courts are rubber stamping courts. They're not hard to get warrants from. So my understanding is that this claim comes from the fact that FISA warrants are approved at an astoundingly high rate. It's like 95+% or something. However, fuck, I wish I could remember some fucking legal blog or whatever. The reason why the approval rate on those is supposed to be so high, from what I've heard explained, is because they're so difficult to get, prosecutors usually work very closely with the court to make sure that they have everything in line so that if they go to a FISA court, they know it's going to get approved. That's the reason why the approval rate is so high on those FISA warrants, is because they work so closely with the court to make sure they have all their ducks in a row before they go and they ask for a warrant. That it's not just like you can go with any fucking random thing, like, oh, give me a FISA warrant. Like, oh yeah. But it's more that like, if we want a FISA warrant, it's going to be real fucking tough, so we need to make sure we have our shit in line before we get approved for that warrant. Is what
you're correct. But if you had bad faith actors in those FBI positions who are politically motivated, then that's when that whole entire system falls apart. And in this case, I think it did. I don't blame the FISA court, or when all is said is done, I don't think it will be the fault of the FISA court. I think it will be the fault of the FBI and of the DOJ officials who decided not to disclose that this was DNC OPPO research and who used this unverified info.
Why wouldn't they have already gotten in trouble for it then? If what you're saying is true,
I think they're going to be. I think that Mueller, because Mueller like literally just handed in his report today. I think we're going to have 2.0, and 2.0 is going to be the FISA court is going to come down hopefully hard on the people who did this. But
okay, give me fucking 5 minutes to see how much of what you're saying is true or not, and then we can reconvene. Okay, hold on.
Let's clarify what we're trying to validate here. So
okay. So my number one thing is, did all of this investigation literally start purely 100% based on the dossier? And then did the FBI lie about the source of that dossier when they went to the FISA court?
The fact that Mueller used a dossier and actually traveled abroad and debriefed Christopher Steele, I mean, that I don't know how
I would expect him to.
Otherwise.
I mean, wait, but because there's a difference between saying that like the dossier was investigated versus the entire investigation hinged on the dossier.
But if it didn't, then what do they do the investigation off of? Like,
well, like supposedly they were investigating like Papadopoulos before the fucking dossier shit was like even public, right?
My understanding is that they received the dossier before it just dropped on.
When BuzzFeed published it, other news outlets, I think CNN included, had already been holding on to it like for a year, but nobody had published it before BuzzFeed.
Had it for longer than that.
Sure.
So the FBI, quote unquote, oh yeah, we started it because of Papadopoulos, but in reality, it's a much fuzzier timeline there, and it's
okay. Fuck it. Well, let's read. Well, hold on. I don't.
I mean,
okay. I'm reading. Okay. I'm reading. Okay.
Okay. But specifically, one more thing.
Yeah.
The claim that the fact that in the FISA application, it wasn't disclosed that this was Hillary Clinton OPPA research. You should fact check that for me because that's a big deal, and that's one of the main.
Sure. Although I'm starting to wonder now if we're going to come into different conclusions of this, because, like, for instance, if I see that the FBI footnotes it with like a lot of this research might be politically motivated, that's enough for me. But you're probably going to say like,
that's so ridiculous. I can't believe you actually believe that, man. Really.
I mean, like, well, what else are you supposed to think if you say politically motivated? But you think you needed to like explicitly say. Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess we'll see. I guess explicitly what it says, but I mean, like, that seems like pretty clear to me. And I feel like a judge would ask about that. Like, they're not just going to see like politically motivated and not have any questions. But
well, I'll give you an explanation for why it is a big deal. Hillary Clinton, her campaign have massive influence and reach with sources all over the world. So,
well, hold on, we're not going deep state, are we?
Oh no, we're sticking to the see. I have facts on my side, so I don't like speculate. I just talk about what we know.
Okay, sure.
What we know is that Christopher Steele received unsolicited intelligence from Hillary Clinton, like from people in the Hillary Clinton camp. Christopher Steele received info from Sid Blumenthal. So the fact that this is like OPPA research is important because Hillary Clinton can tell her henchmen, hey, go and feed info to Christopher Steele, and Christopher Steele is going to feed it to the FBI. Now, I'm not saying that's...
Do you have any evidence whatsoever that Hillary like directed people to feed bad info to Christopher Steele? Because this is bordering on deep state QAnon shit.
What I have is that Christopher Steele received unsolicited intelligence from sources who obviously knew that this was an OPPA research.
Okay, so but like, aren't you playing the same game that you said that we were playing with Trump? I mean, like, Hillary Clinton's political like affiliations have to go like literally globally. Like, I'm sure that in the purview, and she's friends with Donald Trump. Like, isn't it more likely to assume that people that have worked with or are working with Hillary Clinton could also just be passing along info to Steele, and that that's just a thing that could reasonably happen? The same way that Trump.
How did they learn that he was doing this? How did they learn that he? How did Sid Blumenthal know that Christopher Steele was investigating this?
I don't know. Maybe the Clinton campaign has discussed it internally quite a bit. Maybe Christopher Steele. I mean, I don't know. There's like
but no, you're totally right though. I'm saying that's the problem. So Hillary pays Christopher Steele to do his research, and then Hillary Clinton has conversations. Oh, hey, we're doing this info or we're doing this OPPA research on Russia. So Sid Blumenthal kicks unsolicited intelligence, unverified by the way, intelligence to Christopher Steele, and then Christopher Steele brings it to the FBI. Now I think that's what happened.
Okay, sure. I understand what you're saying, but like, I just want to say that like this conversation started off with you being highly critical of people tying together a whole bunch of individual factoids to draw a grand narrative about Trump, and now you're almost giving me like QAnon stuff of, well, Hillary had some people in her campaign intentionally feed false information to Christopher Steele so that he could take it back to the FBI and get a bullshit FISA warrant. Like, I mean, like it seems like
some of that is already a public record. Like, they did use,
and a lot of the Trump factoids are public record.
I'm not speculating about that. That's 100% true. That's direct evidence of my claim. B, Christopher Steele in his deposition swore under oath in his actual like court said he received unsolicited intelligence. So
sure, I'm sure that anybody
people were calling him and saying, "Here, I have this rumor for you."
Sure.
So Christopher Steele was collecting those rumors in the dossier. So
okay, but again, do you see how you're installing a narrative over this? Like, I'm sure that like for somebody as big as Trump, right? I'm sure that anybody collecting info on him is going to get some level of like unsolicited information if people know that you're doing an investigation. I mean, like what you're doing is pretty. Know? I don't know. There's a million different.
All right. So saying that Sid Blumenthal knew about the investigation because this was OPPA research. Okay. I'm very confident in saying that, and I think
sure, but and that well, sure, but Well, no, what I disagree on, I think you're engaging in pretty speculative behavior.
Okay, well, let's get specific. Let's go claim by claim.
Okay, wait. Can I? I want to see right now how much of the. I just want to read like these two articles. Okay, real quick. Can I do that?
Okay, go for it.
Okay, all right. Okay. Fact check of the day. This is from the New York Times. Trump again falsely claims Russia investigation started with the Steele dossier. The president and his press secretary repeated the false claim that the findings of a former British spy prompted the inquiry. A congressional report found it began with a diplomat's tip about a Trump political advisor. Okay, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, White House press secretary, and he sees more. Okay, so basically Trump's saying that, or here, I'll just read this again. So we now find that it was indeed the unverified and fake dirty dossier that was paid for by crooked Hillary Clinton and the DNC that was knowingly and falsely submitted to FISA and which was responsible for setting the totally conflicted and discredited Mueller witch hunt. And the New York Times says false. Mr. Trump and Ms. Sanders repeated a false claim the president made in May when he said the FBI began investigating possible links between his presidential campaign and the Russia election interference based on a dossier compiled by Christopher Steele, a former British spy. The New York Times has reported, and Republicans who hold the majority vote in the House Intelligence Committee have concluded that the investigation began in July 2016 and was prompted by the actions of George Papadopoulos, a foreign policy advisor to the Trump campaign. Mr. Papadopoulos told an Australian diplomat in May 2016 that Russia had political dirt on Hillary Clinton, the Democratic presidential candidate. Australian officials then alerted their American counterparts to the conversation with Mr. Papadopoulos. The information provided by Mr. Steele did not reach FBI officials who were investigating Mr. Trump's campaign until mid-September of 2016. On Monday, Mr. Trump also linked the Steele dossier to surveillance of Carter Page, another former Trump campaign advisor. The Department of Justice obtained a warrant to wiretap Mr. Page in October of 2016, after he had already left the campaign and the Russian investigation had already begun. The wiretap application did cite claims from the dossier, according to previously top-secret documents released by the Trump administration on Saturday, but the application also cited other information. Additionally, Mr. Trump said the Steele dossier fielded the special counsel investigation led by Robert Mueller III, but Mr. Mueller was appointed in May of 2017 to oversee the investigation after Mr. Trump fired the FBI Director James B. Comey. That happened 1 year after Mr. Papadopoulos' disclosure to the Australian diplomat and almost a year after the FBI investigation into Russian election interference. So I don't believe that you can cite the same information multiple times to a FISA court. So if Robert Mueller wasn't hired until May of 2017, they must have taken new information to those FISA courts in order to get continued warrants or surveillance or subpoenas. Right? I'm sorry. The last part was my stuff. Their last sentence was, so almost a year after the start of the FBI investigation into Russian election, right? So if Robert Mueller was hired in the middle of 2017, in May of 2017, he must have had new information that he took to the FISA courts in order to get warrants. He can't continue to use the same dossier to get more and more and more warrants. Like
Christopher Steele had multiple memos, and the person.
Wait, so there are other dossiers
in your article. Yeah, the dossier isn't just one memo. The dossier is a collection of like over a dozen memos. So the idea that, yes, this wasn't a one-time thing, that it was like the dossier. The dossier.
Hold on, wait. So you're saying that when people are saying that other information was cited to get these warrants, you're saying that Mueller is clipping different paragraphs out of the same dossier and then taking that to the FISA court, or? No,
what I'm saying is the dossier was created over time. So
yeah, but hold on, wait. But the dossier
new evidence includes new components. Of
wait, hold on. My understanding. Hold on. This is very important. Wait, this is really important.
At the time, it is important. That's why I'm trying to clarify. At the time this was happening, there wasn't a dossier. Christopher Steele was creating memos over time, and the dossier, which came later, was a collection of those memos.
Yes, but the dossier in its entirety was like finished by like 2016, wasn't it? I was not aware that he was continuing to add to the dossier past 2016. That whatever was published.
I know some memos were past 2016.
So my understanding is that whatever was published by BuzzFeed, that in its entirety had already been held onto for several months by other media outlets. So there wasn't like new information in that dossier, that other people had already had that entirety, that memo, that collection of memos in its entirety, but they didn't publish it because they couldn't verify any of the information. That's my understanding of it. This idea that like new memos are being added and that just new bullshit. This seems fantastical because you're basically saying, or maybe you're not, but it sounds like you're saying that basically when Robert Mueller was appointed in May of 2017, he basically took a couple extra memos, added onto a dossier that I guess by your admission is largely uncredited, went to a FISA court and then was able to get continued surveillance and subpoenas. That sounds highly improbable to me.
So there's two separate things here. There's the FBI investigation, which started in 2016. And then there's the FISA court applications, which extended in 2017.
Okay.
In 2016, there was real-time laundering, for lack of a better term, of intelligence from Christopher Steele's paid Kremlin sources and Sid Blumenthal and all else to the DOJ through Nellie and Bruce Orr and to the FBI. The FBI had Christopher Steele on board as an actual CI. The FBI was like paying Christopher Steele. That happened over time. So when I say that like that relationship was extremely foundational in the investigation. Like there's no getting around that.
I don't deny that. I don't know if you're not understanding me or if we're talking past each other. I'm not saying that like wait, hold on. I'm not saying that the dossier might not have been an important starting place for things, but my claims, there are two claims. One, it wasn't only the dossier or only the relationship with Christopher Steele. One, and that two, the continued investigation, especially by Robert Mueller, had nothing to do with the dossier. They had to uncover more evidence of wrongdoing, or more crimes had to have been uncovered for them to continue to get warrants and to continue the surveillance.
Well, you're objectively wrong about one of the things you just said.
Which
Special counsel obviously had a lot to do with the dossier, considering that they went abroad and debriefed Christopher Steele immediately. So obviously the dossier was important to their investigation.
That's what you just said was not. That's not logically true. What you just said was.
It is logically true.
No, it's
the
not.
dossier was important in the investigation.
Okay, let me give you let me spin a story for you for how what you just said is not logically consistent. The dossier could have started some investigation that uncovered multiple other pieces of evidence, and these multiple pieces of evidence could have led to Mueller getting more like actual like FISA things like stamped by the fucking court. That doesn't mean then that if he goes back and investigates things related to the dossier that this doesn't exist, or that the dossier was super important to getting those warrants. That's just logically not true. What you're saying is just not true.
You said the dossier had nothing to do with the investigation.
No, what I'm saying is that the special counsel doing their due diligence on past reported stuff doesn't mean that past reported stuff is like the central part of their investigation. And what I'm saying is that what seems more likely is that the dossier uncovered stuff and the purview of the FBI investigation that was turned over to Mueller, and that they used that to get more applications or more FISA applications, and that they probably went back and checked the dossier. But that doesn't mean that the dossier was central to the Mueller investigation continuing.
Okay, let's take stock of the facts. Let's take stock of the facts.
Okay.
The dossier, it launched the media frenzy, which was extremely
important. We're not talking about the media frenzy right now. Why do you keep moving the goalposts? We're just talking about Mueller's...
Hey, let me finish my point. The dossier started the media frenzy, which contributed absolutely to pressure within the FBI to pursue this, A. B, Christopher Steele was an extremely important part of the early stages of the Russian investigation.
When was the dossier... When did BuzzFeed publish the dossier?
I think January 10th, 2017.
Okay, so then the FBI investigation had already begun. So
right, but what I'm saying is at that time, Christopher Steele was. That's why I'm taking issue with you. There's the dossier. That's just like one drop of a BuzzFeed article. The bigger the actual thing is Christopher Steele's role in this and his Oppo research.
Okay, sure, but you just tried to paint me this narrative that like the media frenzy behind the dossier is like pushing the FBI forward. The FBI investigation was already going on.
But I'm bringing it all together. I'm pointing out how the dossier has an extremely important role and absolutely everything to do with the Russia investigation. So for you to say it has nothing to do with it, it's just mind-boggling for you to say that. And
I'm not saying that it doesn't have any. I can't understand how you.
Can I get through my? Get through my list real quick.
Okay, go for it. Your narrative.
The dossier was an extremely important springboard, diving board into the entire Russia collusion narrative. That was like the birth of it. You can't deny that.
But I've never denied that.
Let me finish. B, Christopher Steele was absolutely instrumental in feeding information to the FBI that the FBI used to justify their investigations as early as 2016. So we have the media, we have the FBI investigations. C, the dossier was directly cited in FISA applications, and it wasn't disclosed as opposition research paid for by Hillary Clinton. D.
Hold on, wait. Can we? Because wait. You're saying so many like half true things. Wait, I just want. Can you
finish point D?
Yeah, no. Wait. Can you start at point A? I want to write these down. Hold on. Can you start at point A again? I'm sorry. Go back to the beginning. Okay, go ahead. Okay.
So, the dossier was the launch of the Russia collusion. We'll call it media frenzy, or just like the conspiracy theory. That from then on out, this was just a major theory that the media convinced a lot of people, I think, including you, that there was a significant probability this happened. And the dossier was the start.
This is already different than what we said before, but okay, that's fine. Dossier was the launch of the Russian media. Okay, go ahead. And then B, then keep going.
Right. So, yeah, media hype. B, Christopher Steele was instrumental in the FBI's early investigation during 2016. Christopher Steele was a paid informant by the FBI. Okay. And in fact, Christopher Steele was fired by the FBI because he did not disclose his contacts with the media, which is absolutely like ridiculous to do if you're an informant and you're trying to get in contact with the media. So they fired him because he lied about that. But then they kept using his information from the DOJ and from Bruce and Ellie Orr. But B, Steele was extremely important in the early FBI investigations into Russia. C is Christopher Steele's dossier was specifically cited in the FISA application. And it wasn't disclosed as opposition research paid for by Hillary Clinton. And it was, in fact, double dipped because the FBI...
Are you saying this for Robert Mueller's investigation or for the continued FBI.
That's point D. That's point D. I think you can acknowledge that this was a buildup over time of things, right? So for me to say that, like, if Christopher Steele and that Oppo research hadn't happened, we wouldn't have this whole investigation.
Well, I don't even know if that's necessarily true. Well, like, because the thing that you're trying to make it.
Let's keep going. Let's keep going.
Okay.
Let's keep going. Point C is that it was used, and they may not have gotten the FISA warrant without the dossier as evidence. And that is in congressional testimony. So C is they used the dossier, they didn't disclose it was Oppo research, and they might not have gotten the warrant if not for the dossier. And in fact, they were denied a warrant earlier when they didn't use the dossier. A warrant for Carter Page was denied before it was accepted. And then a D, of course, is that Mueller, quote unquote, and this is a media report at the time, back when the media was still pretending like the dossier was good. I know now everybody's going to pretend like the dossier didn't matter.
For the record, I haven't heard people talk about the dossier for like a fucking year, but I mean, okay.
Yeah, okay. So it was used, quote unquote, as a roadmap. Now that line sticks out to me because that was what the media said at the time. But what we do know factually is that Robert Mueller specifically flew agents out there to debrief Christopher Steele. So my overall claim is that none of this would have happened without the Oppo research. Now, I feel justified in saying that because of the very important role it applied in A, B, C, and D. Now, was there other evidence that was used in Part C to get the warrant? Sure. Did Mueller not only use a dossier for his investigation? Sure. But I think if the dossier, or if Christopher Steele had never done this whole Oppo research effort, the narrative would never have gotten to this point.
Okay, hold on. I don't know if we're talking about media narratives or we're talking about the actual investigatory process, which...
But both. To me,
these are two very different questions, right? Because on one, we're trying to find out, well, did this investigation happen from a legal point of view because of because of this dossier? And then the other is like, what does the media think? These are two totally different conversations, right?
I think it's as strong as both. I think from both the legal and the media forensic point of view is that we wouldn't be at this point without Christopher Steele's research. I don't think anybody would. I don't think it's reasonable to deny that.
Okay, so I don't know if the exact wording was released, but so in this story, the FBI disclosed to the court that Steele was paid by people seeking to discredit Trump, but the FBI still viewed Steele as credible. They dealt with the Steele stuff in an extensive footnote with bolded language. Banks said the note didn't disclose that the dossier was paid for by Democrats because the document didn't use any names or identities. It called Trump candidate 1 even after he was elected president, but the note did say that the dossier appeared to be funded by people seeking to discredit Trump. So you're saying that this isn't good enough, that they needed to explicitly say that it was Democrat opposition research? This seems like a really dumb point to get hung up on.
So we can move on to what we were just talking about.
What?
But can we have closure on that? So I'm saying that the dossier and by extension Christopher Steele's research was foundational to this entire epoch. So can we just have closure on that? And
sure. Okay, sorry. So so we can go into this. Okay, so you said that the dossier was the launch of the Russia collusion frenzy.
Foundational.
It was foundational.
It never would have happened without Christopher Steele's research
so,
and the FBI's use.
Even though these initial investigations started with Papadopoulos, that had nothing to do with the dossier, that Papadopoulos' things were passed on from Australian intelligence to U.S. intelligence, like you don't think that counts at all, or?
Keep in mind, Papadopoulos was never even mentioned until he was indicted by anybody who talked about the Russia investigation.
Okay, but the FBI was aware that it had been referred to them in May of 2016, regardless of whether the media was talking about it. So,
right. So you have like one point that they didn't even find important enough to actually mention in their congressional testimony. Papadopoulos was never mentioned at all until he was actually indicted. If he was that important, why did nobody talk about it? But what they were talking about...
This is highly speculative.
I mean, it's as speculative as saying, oh, yeah, you're right, A, B, C, and D. Sure, the dossier was extremely important to that. But hey, we still have this Papadopoulos thing, so maybe this still would have unfolded exactly the same. Now, I acknowledge either way we're being speculative because I'm giving like a conditional. If Christopher Steele's didn't happen, then, they wouldn't have gotten to this point. That's, of course, speculative. You can agree or disagree. My point is the dossier and Christopher Steele's research was extremely important in all of this. Extremely important.
I mean, I don't necessarily disagree, but you're making like this. You keep like kind of like moving back and forth between these two things. So if you want to make the statement that the dossier was an important part of the beginning of the investigation, I'm not going to disagree with that. But if you're trying to say that every single part of the investigation hinged on the dossier, I am going to disagree with that. So what are the two?
No, my claim was that we never would be at this point without Christopher Steele's research and the dossier.
Okay, hold on.
And
So I don't understand what you mean by that. So
Sure.
do you think that the
Yeah.
do you think that the dossier was important to every part of the investigation, or do you think it was just a springboard? If you had to go with one of those two things, which one would you go with?
Well, it depends on what you mean every part of the investigation.
Well,
I
because
think
you're
that
making it sound like that.
there were leads.
You're making it sound
Let me
like the
finish. There were
dossier. Okay,
leads.
go on. Sorry.
There were leads that were followed that probably weren't directly related to the dossier, but I think the dossier was relevant to the beginning, the middle, and the end of the investigation. So I think I would say yes, the entire investigation. It was relevant all the way through.
Okay. What do you mean by relevant?
Kind of like point A, B, C, and you can't really talk about like a major component of the Russia investigation without the dossier being there.
So my
if you
contention is that.
take-
Or go on.
No, you can go. You can.
Well, yeah, because initially it sounded like you were saying that the entire investigation hinged on the dossier, and now you're saying that it might have been used in parts of it. Like my idea is that once the special counsel was founded, that like everything past that point was research that had come from things related to the initial research. So the dossier wasn't the reason why. Like Mueller didn't basically come in and was like, all right, guys, bring up that dossier. Let's see what we can go for. But all of the stuff that they had discovered previously that was in relation to that were the sources that they were going off of from that point.
I think what you described as, okay, let me see the dossier, let's follow this. I think that absolutely did happen, but I don't think absolutely everything tied back directly to the dossier. But another major problem I have with this entire thing is like, let's say, okay, the dossier isn't that important. The dossier was just like wrong. It was misinformation. What are the chances that the dossier would be wrong about everything it said, but the collusion theory is still being right? Like, wouldn't it be pure coincidence if the dossier just ended up being like a huge load of bullshit? But hey, coincidentally, there actually was this conspiracy theory to collude. How unlikely is that to you?
Wait, say that again? What do you mean?
Yeah, I'll say it again. What are the chances that the dossier was just a steaming pile of bullshit that is totally wrong?
Okay.
But at the same time, by coincidence, there actually was a collusion conspiracy theory between the Russian government and
I don't
the Trump
even know
campaign.
how I could begin
That's
to
why-
evaluate something like that. Like I have no
Right.
idea what
But
the
that's a
chances.
problem. That's the problem I have. The problem I have with people saying, "Oh, the dossier was never very important." It's because obviously they're saying that because it's been basically
Well,
discredited
no,
at this
they're
point.
saying that because
But
you're
more
giving like no,
importantly,
no,
it's
no, no,
kinda
no,
like,
hold on. The reason why people are saying that is because you're giving the Nunes talking point that like literally without like the bullshit Oppo research funded by Hillary Clinton, we wouldn't be talking about any of this, which I still don't think is necessarily accurate, right? Page was investigated since 2013. The Papadopoulos stuff was referred to in 2016. Like all of the extended warrants and everything.
I'll refer you to point. I'll refer you to Steele's research role in A, B, C, and D. I think without Steele's research in A, B, C, and D, I don't think we were talking.
Sure,
about
and you can say that, but you're
But
speculating.
that's
Like you're
speculation.
totally speculating.
Of course.
Right.
Yes, I'm speculating. I acknowledge that definitely. But I think there's good reason to believe that. But you go back to my earlier point. Is that why would people be so quick to say, oh, yeah, the dossier is false? But by coincidence, it was basically right. Like there actually was a collusion conspiracy theory, even though the dossier was all wrong. In my mind,
I don't know. This is a
the
totally
dossier-
different question. Like
It's not. In my mind, the truth of the whole entire thing actually did hinge on the dossier. Because like the pure astronomical coincidence of the dossier just like being a shot in the dark of misinformation, but by coincidence there actually was this grand conspiracy theory, that seems like the least likely of all outcomes.
even the way you're loading your language is not like this grand conspiracy
Where
theory.
am I-
Like it
where am
doesn't
I
have to
wrong?
be. Well, when you like, it doesn't have to be a
come on,
grand
come on.
conspiracy that somebody approaches
That's
a
what
camp.
the claim.
Okay, so my understanding that most people were pursuing, I don't know about crazies on Twitter, but my understanding was that what most people thought was that the Trump campaign was contacted with information from a Russian campaign saying like, hey, we've got some dirt on Hillary Clinton. Would you guys like to use this as part of your campaign? I don't think that's necessarily a grand conspiracy. Now, there were other people that were claiming that like Trump was like a plant from 2013 or something, but...
Okay, is what you said first, is that your actual like characterization of what the collusion accusation has been over the past 2 years?
I feel like it, yeah, because the
think
entire
that's
no,
ridiculous.
because the entire thing revolved. The main talking point, from my awareness, was all revolving around that fucking meeting in that tower. That's where everybody said that the Russian people showed up, and even though they talked about some child whatever bullshit, what they were really offering was access to Hillary's emails. That's why the Mueller investigation talked about the Guccifer hacks of the DNC and everything too, because that was the part of the purview of their investigation. That they were basically saying like, oh yeah, the Trump campaign was basically offered emails, and then there were even the clips linked where Trump was saying like, oh well, if you release your emails, you'll be rewarded greatly for it. That was the main talking point. That the Trump Trump campaign had been offered emails or access to DNC information that was to help them win the election. That was like the main talking point. In your opinion, what is your main talking point? What did you think it was?
But we don't have to speculate, because I took great effort to anchor the goalposts at our first conversation.
Did you? Well, technically, we came here to discuss the 40% number, but go ahead.
Right. The accusation was, and this is what I asked you specifically, what do you think the chances are that Trump or his campaign colluded with Russians to hack the DNC? That was my question. That was what I wanted to know. And that was the accusation, that the Trump campaign colluded to hack the DNC. Mm-hmm. That was the accusation. And now, of course, the accusation should be something else. But what you were talking about, the Trump Tower meeting, wasn't disclosed until 2018, I think, well after the Mueller investigation had started. That certainly wasn't.
Wait, what is the difference between what you just said and what I just said?
Because what you said has nothing to do with the DNC hack.
Wait, what do you think I said? Hold on, I'm sorry.
You said that your characterization of the collusion narrative was that the Trump campaign was willing to accept dirt on Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
That's not what the collusion accusation was. The collusion accusation was that there was a quid pro quo between the Trump campaign and or Trump himself and the Kremlin in order to hack the DNC and release those emails. That was the accusation. And I took great effort.
Oh, so the difference is the direction of the Trump campaign to do it versus them just being offered.
No, the difference is, did they have anything to do with the DNC hack? That's the big thing. The DNC hack was the
understanding was that there would be a quid pro quo, that if the Kremlin had offered the Trump campaign, right, access to these emails, that there would be some kind of favor, involved in doing this. That we're giving you this information, that we expect favorable treatment. And a lot of people speculated, me included, that the DNC or the RNC platform was changed, for instance, to soften its language on Crimea and Ukraine or whatever. Stuff like that would have been part of it.
That's also another just flat out false point, by the way.
What?
That he changed the platform to soften the language.
How is that flat out false?
Because it wasn't actually the platform. It was a proposed amendment to the platform. And all that Trump changed was some wordage on the amendment that included like armed.
Yeah, so the specific wordage, the specific wordage changed was basically made it sound like the United States wouldn't like militarily intervene or provide like weapons or whatever to the people in Crimea.
But that was changed to a proposed amendment. It wasn't a change to the platform itself, right?
Wait, what is the difference between these two things?
Oh, please. The difference is Trump campaign comes on and says, oh, hey, our platform is too strong against Russia. We need to weaken it. So we need to change it to say this instead.
Yes.
Versus somebody else saying, hey, we need to strengthen our stance against Russia. So do this. And then Trump campaign said, okay, fine, great. Let's just not vow military contributions to Ukraine. And then they supported it. So there's a very big difference between those two.
I have no idea. Hold on. So stop me when I'm wrong. So my understanding was that the RNC had a platform with specific language related to how to deal with like Ukraine and Crimea, and that the Trump campaign wanted to soften the language used towards Crimea terms of using. So which part of this is wrong?
The platform originally didn't include those words. Somebody proposed an amendment to add language on Russia and Ukraine. So it was like, our platform doesn't currently go over this, so we're going to propose an amendment to do that. Now, where the Trump campaign came in was they changed the word on the amendment. And then when there wasn't reference to military aid to Ukraine, then Trump campaign supported it, which overall strengthened the platform. So it's more accurate to say that Trump and his campaign supported a adjustment to the platform to strengthen their stance against Russia, but they also intervened to weaken the edit a little bit to not offer military aid to Ukraine. And I'll add to that, the DNC platform didn't promise military aid to Ukraine. The DNC
this is like an incredibly okay. So hold on. You're saying that there wasn't. So they didn't change the platform, but rather there was a proposed change to the platform, and they made that proposed change weaker than making the platform weaker, and then that amendment passed. And there's a substantial difference between these two things.
Yes, because the platform was stronger after the amendment. The platform went from weaker to stronger.
But the proposed part was made weaker by Trump's campaign.
Yes, it was made weaker, but that's not the same thing. The platform was made stronger by the amendment. They made the amendment weaker by not promising military aid, but the DNC platform also didn't promise military aid.
We're not talking about the DNC platform. Why? What about it? We don't need. No, we don't need to. It's not related to this.
We do need to, because we need to understand if his proposed amendment was reasonable or if it was motivated by some sort of quid pro quo. Now,
But this is not related. This is not.
It seems to me it's pretty reasonable.
This is not. No, this is absolutely not related. It is absolutely not related. There are two totally different conversations.
It's pretty reasonable to not promise military aid against Russia. It seems like I could think of other reasons why they would not want that to be in the platform, other than being part of some quid pro quo Russia conspiracy, especially since the strength we're talking about didn't even exist in the DNC platform. So it's not whataboutism, it's the idea of...
Okay, I got it. I understand. I understand. This is an insanely disingenuous, it is so stupid. This is like saying no. So okay,
get out your notepad. Let's go line by line. So
well, here I'll read the story. So I understand your point. So my point initially was that Trump's campaign softened the platform against Ukraine in the RNC place. But you're saying, well, they didn't actually soften the platform. There was an amendment that was pushed to make the platform tougher, and they softened that amendment that was going to make it tougher. We're essentially saying the same thing, but you're being a little bit more nuanced. There's not a huge difference between these things.
Because if that proposed change has said, and we're going to nuke Russia, and they said, hey guys, let's not nuke Russia. Let's take out that part of the amendment. Then your statement would still apply. Your characterization would still apply. Oh, hey, they made it weaker, didn't they? Well, yeah, but the overall platform was stronger after they supported that amendment that made it stronger. So, and I think the reason why it's important is because I think a lot of people, I'm not sure if you knew, maybe you knew and you were intentionally being misleading about what happened, but I think a lot of people in your chat didn't know that the Trump campaign actually supported an amendment that made the platform stronger. That took out one provision about military aid to Ukraine. That's not the same thing as they went and just weakened the platform. That's a mischaracterization of what happened.
Okay, gotcha.
Irresponsible.
All right. Do you have any final words for the chat? Because I'm supposed to do other callers today.
Other callers. I have one more point I wanted to make about the reporting on this, but I can't really think of it right now. So
okay, well, let me know so I can update my priors on you. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I encourage you to go back and revisit your priors, man. Okay. Definitely.
All right. I love you. Have fun, buddy. Peace out. Okay, I'll read this article. So, 2016 RNC delegate, Trump director changed the party platform on Ukraine support. President Trump may have been involved with a change to the Republican Party campaign platform last year that watered down support for U.S. assistance to Ukraine, according to new information from somebody who was involved. Diane Denman, a Republican delegate who supported arming U.S. allies in Ukraine, has told people that Trump aide J.D. Gordon said in the Republican convention in 2016 that Trump directed support weakening that position in the official platform. Ultimately, the softer position was adopted. Denman is scheduled to meet this week at the House and Senate Intelligence Committees to discuss what she saw, said two sources when we were the briefings. Investigators in Congress and elsewhere wanted to ask the San Antonio area woman about how her proposal supporting Ukraine changed in the course of last year's convention. People familiar with the story described it to the NPR. Robert N. Driscoll, a Washington-based lawyer for Denman at McGlinchey Stafford, declined to comment. The revision to Denman's proposed amendment to the Republican platform scaled back the party's position on pro-Western elements in Ukraine from supporting supplying weapons for fighters there to more general assistance. The issue is of interest to investigators in Congress and the team working for Justice Department Special Counsel Robert Mueller because the idea of arming Ukrainians in the fight against pro-Russian separatist forces was staunchly opposed by the Russian government and, it seems, the Trump campaign as well. Denman has told people she spoke with Gordon, blah, blah, blah. She followed up with blah, blah, blah. So basically, Exkillsmeh's point is that the Ukraine position wasn't softened, but rather an amendment that would have strengthened it was softened to something that would have been stronger than what it was initially, but not as strong as they wanted it to be. Okay. All right. Holy fucking yikes.